Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jacob Restituto, and I'm a musician from Northport, New York. And today I have a very special guest and honor to have, wow, I'm totally Jason. I almost said Jim. I literally we were talking about how to pronounce your name 30 seconds ago, and now I say Jason.
Jason.
You messed me up with that. We were talking backstage about the Office, and
Yeah.
it just totally threw me off. Jason Halbert, man, I apologize about that. Welcome to the show, man. I appreciate you taking the
Thanks,
time.
Jacob. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah,
This
absolutely,
is
man.
this is my this is my first ever YouTube interview.
Wow,
I'm
welcome.
excited about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you, man. The people I
Hope I
mentioned.
don't ruin your channel and everybody unsubscribes, but
Well, you know what?
I'm
I already
actually
ruined your name, so we'll be even for that.
yeah.
So for people that are not familiar with you, which actually I'm surprised, I'm happily surprised how many people were really excited about this conversation and stuff. There were a lot of people that I mentioned this was happening, and people were like really excited. So for the few people that may not be familiar with who you are, can you give a little backstory?
Yeah, I'm Kelly Clarkson's music director. I've been working for her for almost 18 years now, and that's kind of my whole world, my whole life right now. So yeah, she always has about 8 projects going on. So I've been with Kelly for 18 years. Prior to that, did a lot of touring for about 10 years, and songwriter, producer. Just as you know, as a self-employed musician, whoever, whatever I can do, I'm available for.
Wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. That's so funny. I highly relate to that. How did you end up getting the original gig with Kelly? How did that, I mean, I was doing a little research on your career as a musician and as a producer and all the, I mean, like you said, all the different hats that you have worn,
Yeah.
whether it be
Yeah.
arranger, producer, songwriter, or now
Yep.
music director. Like how did you make that transition from when you started as a musician to now working with Kelly? So if you maybe you could give actually a little bit longer of a backstory of yourself as a musician, I'd love to hear that.
All right. Yeah, I can give you the every little boring detail. But yeah, I moved to Nashville in '93 and went to Belmont University, and I actually got married at 18 to my high school sweetheart. We've known each other since kindergarten,
Love that.
and moved to Nashville and never dreamed I could make a career playing music. So I sold my Roland D50 for $600, and we made our move to Nashville with the idea of giving up music. And I was studying music business. So I didn't take any music classes at Belmont. My dream was to like to be a publicist or something like that. So I got a job at a Christian record label called Sparrow Records at the time. It's now EMI.
Mm.
And I was there for about 6 months. And my wife got a job interning for True Artist Management and managed a band called DC Talk at the time. And they were doing their first headlining tour after their Michael W. Smith tour, and they needed a keyboard player. And so my wife, without telling me, put me on the audition list. And if you know anything about CCM music from that era, there was Stephen Curtis Chapman, Michael W. Smith. That was my category, like the 80s, piano based music. DC Talk was a rap group, and I'm like, that's not me. There's no way they're gonna hire me, and I didn't even know the songs anyway. See, I'm making a very long story. I'm gonna get to Kelly.
No, I love it,
So
man. Give all the details.
the
It's a great
yeah,
story.
so they were looking for a B3 player, and I'd never played a B3 in my life. So I had a friend,
That's
kind of a
the
mentor growing
organ,
up.
right? The Hammond
Yeah,
B3.
it's the big brown piece of furniture you see me playing on
Yeah.
the show every day. Had never played it, and kind of a guy I looked up to growing up in Texas. He was a B3 player, so I booked a Southwest flight to Austin, and we literally started with, "Here's how you turn it on, here's how you play it." So did that, came back, did the audition, got the job with DC Talk. Toured with them for 6 years.
Wow.
Free at Last era, Jesus Freak, and Supernatural.
Which were
And
huge in that
yeah,
genre. All
and
that.
keep in mind, like, I mean, if you're familiar with them, like I never played in a high school band. I never The only thing I'd ever done is play piano at church growing up, and then just obsessed over 80s music. Um, so I never played a club, never played a theater, and literally my first tour with DC Talk was arenas, 20,000 people. I mean, it was just like it.
I
And
love
for the
that, man.
entire first year, I mean, I was so eager. I was up every morning at load in, just looking at the speakers and the light. Like it was just, it was amazing. So anyway, I dropped out of Belmont after 6 months. Didn't even finish the first semester.
I
Ended up
relate to
touring
that.
as a lot of people do. And after DC Talk, I started a band called Zilch on Go To Records, which morphed into a band called Sonic Flood. And Sonic Flood had a lot of success in that industry. You know, we went gold on our first album.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really bringing through this fast. After the second year of Sonic Flood, I sort of had a crisis of conscience. The worship industry was really blowing up at the time, and I was at a conference with a band called Delirious, and I was playing, and we got done. I went in the lobby.
All these massive names you're just
yeah.
dropping all over here.
So I remember I was with my wife and went in the lobby, and it looked like you were at the freaking mall. Like, I just, over time, I got so disgusted with I was passionate about what we were doing musically, but I got so disgusted with the concept of blending spirituality and finance and money. Like, it just, I'm not saying it's wrong for anybody else. For me, I made a decision that I was never going to make another dime off the church again. Like, I felt gross about that. So
interesting.
I wanted to have my income from somewhere else. And if I wanted to be a part of these projects, it would be because I wanted to be, not because I needed the money.
Very interesting.
So we left, disbanded Sonic Flood, and my wife and I moved to LA. And during that time, you brought up before some records you knew that I'd worked on. But while I was in LA, I was producing Matt Redman, Tim Hughes, David Ruiz, Rita Springer, some of the Vineyard people who are still great friends.
Yeah, and, which I mean, I have to interrupt and just, you're not going to mention it, so I need to mention it for everybody else. The fact that you were, I think, the arranger on Tim Hughes' "Here I Am to Worship," which is probably one and what was it? And
I produced it with Dwayne. Yeah, we produced and played everything.
Yeah. Which is probably one of the biggest songs in the Christian music industry. So that, you weren't going to mention it, but I need to give you that credit because that's huge, man. That's crazy.
So moved out here, and I met a guy named Busby, who, ironically, Busby was one of the songwriters on Kelly's Dark Side, and he's had tons of hits. He unfortunately passed away last year, but we were working on some projects together, and he had auditioned for he was set up for auditions for Nick Carter from Backstreet Boys, who was doing his first solo tour. He got sick, and he was like, "Hey, are you interested in doing this?" And I'm like, "Not really." At this point, I've already toured for 10 years between DC Talk and Sonic Flood, and had young kids, and just was really not interested in doing the touring thing again. But my wife, as usual, pushed me, and she was like, "No, go do this." And so I showed up at SIR, and again, I'm still, at this point, I'm still a country kid grew up in Texas. Next stop was Nashville. Now this is my first month in LA. I've never had sushi. I've never had it, I was meat and potatoes, as Southern as you could get. And so I walk into SIR, and there's about 80 people in the lobby, and I was the only I was the only white guy there, which wasn't an issue, other than I did not have experience in R&B music. So my assumption was that they're clearly looking for, a certain style of music that is not in my purview. So I walked into the audition, and Nick was there, and management and label. And it's a recurring, I've got some funny stories with Kelly. It's ironic that I have produced almost every one of Kelly's vocals you ever heard, and I'm the worst singer you've ever, I do not sing. And so you would love to have a camera with me trying to sing her notes and trying to get what I hear out of my head. I'm like, no, and it's embarrassing.
That's amazing.
And that's just, that's God's sense of humor to put me in a position where I'm vocal producing with no talent there. So all that to say, I walk into the audition, and the guy who does the auditions is Barry Squire. And he's sort of a guy in LA that if you move to town, you call Barry Squire. You may not hear from him for a year, but he will call you eventually. He's like my friends that got into Pink's band, Alanis, Sheryl Crow. He's the guy that put all those bands together back at that time. So I walk in, and he's like, "Hey, why don't you just sit down and sing us a song? Maybe do some Stevie Wonder and sing Superstition, or maybe sing Marvin Gaye's What's Going On." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." I looked at Nick, and I'm like, I don't sing, and this isn't what I do. If you're looking for that, I don't want to waste your time. I'm the wrong guy. If you're looking for somebody who can put your band together, play your record, give you a great tour, I'm there. He's like, "All right, don't sing, just sit down," and got the band in and jammed with the band. So got the gig. Anyway, they hired me.
As the musical director?
Yeah, as the musical director. He had a young band. It was a lot of his friends from Florida. And so, it was sort of, at the time, I was the old guy that was going to whip these guys in shape. I think I was 28 or 29, something like that.
Oh, no, I'm getting old.
Yeah. So I did that went out with Nick for about a year, and we were doing the Jingle Ball circuit, which is all the
Mm.
Christmas shows around December, and we were doing 8 shows with Destiny's Child, and we were in Miami, and I flew my brother out to come out on the road with me just to hang out, and because these festivals, there's a ton of bands, and
Hmm.
anyway, he wanted to meet Beyonce, so I'm standing in the hallway. I take my brother and I go knock on, I talk to security. I'm like, hey, can we get a picture with Destiny's Child and with Beyonce? He's like, yeah, sure, go on in. So I go on in and they're there, and there's this guy standing there, and they're all talking, and I hand my camera to this guy, and I'm like, hey, do you mind taking a picture of me and my brother with Beyonce and Kelly and Michelle? And we did, so I still have the picture. And as I'm leaving, the guy hands me my camera because we didn't have camera phones then. And stand in the hallway talking. And it turns out the guy that I handed the camera to was Randy Jackson, and he was in the middle of he was out running front of house for Destiny's Child, and it was towards this would have been November like 2002, I think. We exchanged phone numbers because I was a big fan of Journey, and so we just talked about all the stuff that Randy had worked on between Mariah and Journey, and kind of geeked out a bit, and exchanged numbers. Never heard from him, and the following June, the first week of June, I get a call, and I just auditioned with Barry Squire again because Nick's thing was coming in. I'd auditioned for Jane's Addiction and got a call, and it was coming down to me and a guy named Chris Pooley, and Chris Pooley's the music director for American Idol now.
Wow.
And Katy Perry. And I was really excited about it. It was definitely more my style of thing. So Randy calls and he's like, hey, yo dog, have this show American Idol, and I'd love for you to be the music, like, we have this winner and this runner-up, it's Kelly and Justin, and they're about to go do a bunch of press and promo and TV shows, and would you be the music director for that? And I'm like, oh man, I'm sorry, I just went after this other gig, and so I'm gonna have to pass on that. And so I hung up and called my wife, told her the whole story, and she's like, okay, you're crazy, hang up, call him back, because she'd been watching, I'd never seen American Idol, she'd been watching the whole season, had voted for Kelly, blah blah blah. So I called Randy back, and I'm like, hey, I think I actually want to come do it. And so he put me, a week later, I was doing Leno with Justin Guarini.
Wow.
And Justin and Kelly's movie had just come out, and they had a duet called Timeless, I think, and they were going to perform together in Bryant Park on June 13th. And went out, did the duet with them as Justin's music director, met Kelly, and she's like, oh, you're from Texas? We talked about that a little bit. And a week later, she asked me to be her music director. And so that's how I got to be Kelly's music director. And it's just crazy. I'm sure you hear a ton of stories. It's sometimes you get there by these weird relationships. Like Randy never heard me play a note. Kelly never heard me play a note. It was. So there's your long answer.
So actually, very interesting part about that last part. So I'm curious your perspective on this. So you've had at this point in your career, you've met and worked with some really successful people. And I'm actually surprised to some degree that you actually took the gig as Kelly's musical director. And I'm curious, did you at the time, like, she wasn't who she is today, so at the time, did you see that as a step up or a step down in your career? Because like you've worked with these people that like you worked with Destiny's Child, and now you're working with a winner of a TV show, and it's like, if anything, it looks actually like a step down, which was like an amazing step of faith, you know what I mean? But I'm just curious your perspective.
Yeah, I've never even thought about it that way. It didn't feel like a step down or a step sideways. Like I've always I just love playing music. I know it sounds cliche. I don't think of it that way, and I just love being around really talented people. And I will say it felt like a step up for me in the sense of, at that time, other than with Nick Carter, I'd not done a lot of television work. So, and this was all, this was my opportunity. That's my first time. Well, that would have been my second time in Leno, but like, Good Morning America, Saturday Night Live, all these things that were coming up. So that felt, and at the time I was associating it more with, this was me doing work for American Idol, which I saw as becoming a huge thing. And my thought was that I would just work with Justin and Kelly. And then the next season I did work with Ruben and Clay. And the next season, So to me, I was more doing stuff for American Idol, other than obviously after working with Kelly, we did this first little run. I mean, I became a fan. I loved playing her shows. From the very first show we did like 8 cover songs, and we were doing country, Aerosmith, Mariah, the Kelly stuff. And so as a music director and a keyboard player, it was just exciting, challenging, and I loved it.
So I didn't mean that in any offensive way, by the way.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh no, it was not at all.
I just found that the reason I asked actually, and the reason I say that is because, and it's a perfect segue into what I think is the next question is, American Idol is relatively new at the time, and so often, at least now, looking in hindsight, there so many of these stars, you know, or stars that people that win these talent shows never go anywhere. Now, Idol is a little different than like say The Voice. You know,
Yeah.
like the people that win The Voice, you never hear from again. But the people that win Idol, there's a lot of stars that actually came out of that. But even like the second place, third places, some of them actually won. But I'm curious, like, why do you think that is? Some of these stars that did flop, you know, and some of these that became massive household names.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly don't know. We've talked about it a lot, and of course, every time I go home and visit family, everybody's a Voice or Idol fan loves to talk about who made it and why and all the things.
Mm.
I think this is a total guess, so I really don't know. My opinion is that everybody needs some sort of a break to get somewhere. So sometimes idols and voices can kind of be shortcuts, to get there. It seems like as idols gone on over time, like you have less people coming up playing in clubs, playing in bars, playing like honing their craft. Fortunately for Kelly, she'd already been doing that for years, so I think that's a part of it. There's probably just oversaturation. There's just so much stuff coming out. But yeah, I really don't have a great answer for that.
Yeah, it's one of the music industry queries that like boggle the mind of all these musicians.
Yeah, I think if anybody figured it out, they would make a killing. Because
you're right. Exactly. Yeah. And then to piggyback actually on another comment you made with now related to Kelly and even just in general, this is something I think about a lot. How certain artists, you mentioned that Kelly started by you and Kelly actually when you started touring with her, started doing a lot of cover songs. And I'm really curious. I think about this all the time, even as a musician myself. Like I'm always concerned to do covers because I don't want to get caught as a cover artist, where people like, this cover blows up on YouTube. I have 10 million views on it. And now when I go play a show, people want to hear that cover instead of my song. Yeah. And, but there's a lot of artists that have done that. Like Kelly with, Idol and then, or Shawn Mendes on Vine when he was doing like these, cover songs. And I'd love to know your perspective on, how you helped Kelly transition from a cover artist into now her, like when people think Kelly Clarkson, they think of like all original music. They don't think of, her covering Aerosmith. So how do you make that transition, or how do you not get caught? How do you, because every musician needs to do covers or should do covers to some degree, but it's like, how do you not get caught in that?
Yeah. I think that the key for her was, well, it felt organic because Idol was mostly covers. So it was actually with all covers until a moment like this, which was written for her at the end. So the first tour, it felt natural to do the stuff she did on the show. And then we kind of did like a little influence segment, and it was just her covering the things that she loved. If you'd have interviewed me at that time, my guess would have been, yeah, we have to do this the first tour, but once our album comes out, we're not going to do any more covers because that's not what a lot of artists do. And that's just a testament to Kelly. She's the one who's like, no, these are my fans, that voted for me. They love hearing me do that. So, and then it was important to Kelly and to myself to, okay, if we're going to keep incorporating covers, and that was our second tour. We started doing that when we started Breakaway. If we're going to do it, let's at least try to make it meaningful to you, or let's try to put a twist on it, so we're not just literally doing karaoke covers. And so that's, most of the time we do something with Kelly, the majority of the time there's a spin that she puts on it, and a little bit.
So even in her touring shows, she would do covers.
Yeah. So we, the first tour when we did this medley of covers, it got to be apparent that 60 shows in, you're going to get bored singing the same covers every night.
Sure.
So I went to her during the Breakaway tour, and I think this was like right at the beginning of Twitter or Facebook, and I would start getting messages from fans saying, we want to hear her cover this or cover that. So I suggested like, hey, why don't we cover a different song every night? Let's poll your fans and see what they want to hear. And she was like, isn't that going to be too hard to do? I'm like, no, we'll just, I'll have it arranged in the morning, show up for sound check, sing it. And so we started in 2004, 2005, doing a different cover song every night. And again, I thought that would just be for that tour. And then it became a fans loved it. And so, 15 years later, it's like, oh my gosh, we're going to run out of songs to cover at some point. And now that's been amplified times 100 with the TV show, because now we open every song with a cover. Yeah.
Yeah, which I want. That's a perfect segue into this next section that I want to talk about with, which would be to something with the TV show and stuff, and your
Yeah.
involvement with that. But the karaoke, is like I was gonna say that's the perfect like she still continues to do these covers with
Yep.
the karaoke, which is like just fascinating. Like, and I don't know the answer to this. Maybe I don't know if you do or not either. But it still is interesting with the amount of covers she does that she's still known as Kelly Clarkson, the original music. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
don't
And
think of
that's what I was gonna say earlier. It's just like if she would have just come out of the show and done covers and recorded other people's songs, she probably would have been known as the cover person. But right off the bat, I mean, she's also an incredible songwriter. You know,
sure,
Because of You, Walk
of
Away,
course.
Hazel Eyes, and then everything on to to even stuff we're working on now. So I think her greatness as a songwriter and a vocalist, and also doing the covers and just her emoting things. I think she can get away with it that some others maybe couldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that so fascinating.
Yeah,
It's very interesting to see which artists do get caught in it and which don't. You know,
yeah,
it's very very
yeah,
interesting, and it's definitely a fear of mine.
yeah.
No, but that's cool, man. That's amazing. So, what does a typical day to day look like for you as the musical director?
It just see. I wake up about 5:30, get to work around 6:30 or 7, and it's just nonstop, 7 days a week. So uh, Mondays our band rehearsal day. We have about 6 hours. I think you heard that in the little video you watched. To do all of our music for the next week. So we do 6 karaoke's a week, um, and there's 6 acts per episode. So we do blah 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 math. 12 bumpers per episode, 6 times a week. So it's something like 80 to 90 cues a week that we have to rehearse for every Monday, plus all of our little custom things. Um, we record those rehearsals, and then I have to do mixes of them because that's what Kelly never rehearses with us until the morning, about 15 minutes before she performs it on camera. So I have to give her mixes to rehearse to, instrumental, one with BGVs with the band,
Wow.
and she listens to those in glam that morning as she goes, and then we film for about 3 hours per episode, and then afterwards I go back into post and work on the mix and editing and planning
Wow. So
songs for the
you're
next week.
involved in the whole process. That's
Yeah, yeah.
interesting. I'm surprised it doesn't go like you do it, you do your thing, and then like it goes off to post production. But you are the post production.
Well, I mean, it does after I do my thing. We have a post production mixer, but there's just a
Oh,
whole
okay.
lot more elements that need to go in, and so um, sometimes we'll take stuff from a better pass or comp something together and just, or I need to do mixes to get approved. We have guest artists on, and there's just, and
Oh,
we're
they
we're,
have to
we're pre,
approve the mix.
yeah, yeah,
Interesting. All these
yeah.
things you just never know about the music industry behind the scenes.
Yeah, the red tape and the layers is just it was a shock coming. I heard you made a comment about trying to imagine the red tape involved in covering a song on
I so
television.
wanted to talk about that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's so this was all brand new to me 2 years ago. So coming out of the touring world, it Kelly wants to cover a song, we can perform any song we want to. As you know, there's a compulsory license. So once a song has been released by law, anybody can cover it without, all you have to do is pay the fee. You don't have to get permission from the artist to cover somebody's song live. As soon as you record it for video, then you have to go to the publisher and the artist and get permission for it. So I had, first of season one, we get all our requests from fans and they're like, we want to hear Kelly cover this. So I made a list of like 30 songs so that we can prepare for the month. And, we're like, this person wants this song, this song. So I started arranging, we started recording, and then we got our first batch back from licensing, and over half the songs were denied by the artist. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a challenge. So
How
not
does that even
only,
happen? Like, who would say no to Kelly Clarkson covering a song? I'm not
there's a
asking for
lot of
names. I'm just
yeah,
saying, like,
no, there's a lot of artists that are very precious about it, and and it's not about Kelly Clarkson. There's there's 3 or 4 artists that have major hits that we've been trying to cover. That
wow.
it's a blanket no to anybody. It's not Kelly, doesn't care who it is. It's going to be a
Really?
no.
That seems so counterintuitive as an artist.
And
Like,
and you have to have everybody sign off. So even if a lot of times the artists themselves have said yes to a song,
oh my God.
but then maybe a co-writer has said no, or so I learned really quickly. It shrunk my workflow because I realized you're not going to plan ahead. So sometimes now we're getting our list. I get a list every Thursday from our clearance department of what new songs are cleared, and if we have an audience member slated for the following Tuesday that requested the song, I might not find out till Thursday, hey, that song didn't clear. So I don't start working on songs now until they've actually cleared. And fortunately, as the shows become more successful, like there was a batch of songs from a few artists that we really wanted to cover and had a lot of requests for. That season 1 we were denied, and season 2 they're like, yep, cleared them all. So
interesting. That's wild, man. Because I mean, I deal with something similar in the aspect of like when I do like the breakdowns of music on my channel, what the monetization aspect of like, or even the blocking aspect of the copyright claims. And I'm like, I always think like, oh, of course, the bigger channels, I'm sure that they, like they work something out. But even Kelly Clarkson gets denied for these cover songs. That is wild. I can't believe that. That's
I couldn't either. It was a shock to me, and my that was my first reaction. I'm like, why wouldn't artist A or songwriter A want to make the money off of licensing for the show?
Well, not even that, but it just promotes the song more. Like forget the money to some degree. It's like, why wouldn't you just want, like, it's gonna be on national television by somebody like that's like I don't know.
That exact thought is the same reason why some artists are like, yeah, it doesn't matter about the money. This art is precious to me, and I just I don't want other versions of it.
True. That is so fascinating.
So it's been a huge learning curve. That and on tour, there's literally been times where I wake up and I get a text from Kelly that I want a harp player today, or I want a kids choir, or I want to.
And you're in the middle of Tokyo, and you got to figure that.
out. And that's like I thrive off that stuff. Like it really stresses out some of our crew guys, but there's nothing more exciting to me than being given an impossible task, and given the resources to do it and making it happen. Mm-hmm. So I came into this TV show with that mentality, and so for 18 years I've had one boss, Kelly Clarkson, and so whatever she says, I get to do it. First week of the TV show, we had a cooking segment called 18th Century Cooking, and they wanted to dress us up medieval, and the producers asked me to write a medieval cue for us to play. So, Jocko, our guitar player, brought a lute, and I rented something called what is it? Not a didgeridoo, a hurdy-gurdy. I rented a hurdy-gurdy because I Googled what are medieval instruments. Rented a hurdy-gurdy from Hans Zimmer, our guitar.
Oh my gosh, that's wild.
And so didn't know it was a thing, and it's it's this crazy little violin pump thing. You kind of play like a keyboard that has violin strings. So we used it for our 8-second segment, and I got the invoice. And it was like $800 to rent it for the day, and I sent an invoice into the show, and I'm like, yeah, we rented this, and they're like, yeah, no, you didn't get approval for this, and I'm like, I know Kelly said it was cool. That's not how it works in corporate world. So so I ate the cost of that one, and I learned a quick lesson. And so I'm still getting to do everything I had, everything that's led up to me being able to do what I do. It's just now there's just a different layer on top of it. And it's not a bummer. It's just a new challenge learning.
Sure. It's a learning curve, 100%.
You had the corporation even to ask permission, for a different thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was very, it's amazing. Yeah. And for people that don't know, the Hans Zimmer, the reason I've laughed at that is like, he has done every single movie score that you've ever heard, like any major motion picture. He's wild. Like that's crazy. That's so funny.
Yeah. And I actively peruse, the fan message boards, like there's Pulse and there's the Kelly Express, and I've always been an advocate for the fan to Kelly, and so I love being able to tell you some of the things behind the scenes, because I get Instagram DMs all the time. Well, why didn't you do this, or why can't we do this, or why it's just like there's so many more factors involved in this. Like people half the time I agree with them. I'm like, yeah, it would be awesome if we would cover this song, but we can't.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, there's so much that people don't see that goes behind the scenes, and even on my end, I can't even fathom as the tiers go higher. The things we have no clue about. Man, it's so wild. Now you mentioned touring with Corey, Kelly. Yeah. Sorry, and I'm trying to read the chat from the people coming through, and it's just multitasking is not always my best thing. So you mentioned going on tour with Kelly, and like maybe I mentioned it with like the joke of like finding the harp player in Tokyo. Yeah. Have you toured on every tour with her?
Yeah, I've done everything except for I think in spring of 2002 they did the Idols tour with all the top 10 or 12 American Idol winners, and so I didn't do that tour. Okay. But I've done everything with her since post that tour. So yeah. Wow. I think our first tour was I call it the trailer park tour. We literally played state fairs and
humble beginnings.
Yeah. And then I think Breakaway, and then Addicted, Hazel Eyes, not in order. Yeah. Um, All I Wanted, Stronger, the Maroon 5 tour, Piece by Piece tour, and
That's
Meaningless. So
crazy.
yeah, all of them.
That's wild. So the follow up question to that is, how have you mentioned in the beginning of this, like you have at the time you had a young family, and now you still have a family. I think a relatively young family.
Yeah.
How did you balance the touring of the home life and family life? And I know that that's hard, and I'd love to know your
Yeah.
perspective on that.
Yeah. So like I said, whenever Randy asked me to do the television promo for the winners, that's really only about 10 or 12 shows, and I thought that's what I'd be doing. When Kelly asked me to go tour with her full time,
Yeah.
um, I just told her, I'm like, I've been touring for 10 plus years already. At the time, my kids were like, I think 5 and 8, and I can't do that again. It's really important for me to keep my family intact. Um, and she's like, well, what would it take to be able to do that? And I said, well, we've had a rule as a family. I don't go 3 weeks without seeing my kids or my wife. So I just need to know if I'm going to do this, I need the environment where, I can bring my family out anytime I need to.
I
Because
love
in
that.
some camps that's not cool, and it's just not, what happens on the road, which is totally fine. But that wasn't where I wanted to be. And she was like, "Are you kidding? Absolutely." So for 18 years, my kids are 27 and 24 now, 23, 26, something like that. They grew up on the road, so every 3 weeks, no matter what, whether we were in Europe, Australia, U.S., a lot of tours. If you're familiar with touring, I'm sure tour buses sleep 12 people, just 12 bunks on the average tour bus, and that's a cost-effective thing to be able to transport that many people. Kelly would do things like she would only put 6 to 8 people on a band bus, so we had room for all of our wives or kids to come out on
Wow.
the road, and then being able to, she's really about hiring quality people, and I got to hire all the musicians in our audio team. So I got to hire people that would create an environment where it was family friendly, and so that's how we've been able to do it. That's really a testament to her.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I mean, I think that it speaks to the longevity of it. The fact that you were able to, she created like an environment that welcomed who you were, so that it made you stick around. That's amazing, man.
Yeah,
And like you mentioned, like the fact that it's not a cost effective thing to leave empty tour like space on tour bus, but like in the long run, it's a long term perspective as opposed to the
yeah,
short term money. Like
yeah,
that's amazing. I love that, man. That's really cool, and that's something
yeah,
that my wife and at least I think about for my wife. Like and future kids one day, how
yeah,
we would handle that because
yeah.
it's
Yeah, I've seen a lot of families torn apart by
sure.
by touring. It's just not, it's hard being. I think for 12 of the last 18 years, I've been gone no less than 200 days a year. And so, like, during the stronger era, I was gone from home 300 days a year. So
Wow.
you can imagine what that's like, trying to maintain a family that way. And it's not
Yeah.
for everybody. Luckily, I have a wife who's very supportive, and
Well, I
we're in
mean,
this
based on
together.
the first half of this conversation,
Yeah,
95% of your career is, on the back of your wife. All these things that she was.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, 100%. She was like, yeah. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
amazing, man. That is
but then
amazing.
my daughter I can't remember how old she was, about 6. When Kelly shot the Because of You video, my daughter actually played young Kelly in the video, and
Oh, that's fun.
so it was cool when we did the tour. It was cool having all the footage of Kennedy up on the screen while we were playing the song, and so I got to see my daughter every night at 60 feet tall, trying not to cry like a dad, and so. But yeah, Kelly's been very welcoming to my kids and my family.
I love that. That is really cool. That's really I think important, and I think really just amazing in general. Um, Going into the next question, I want to say again, thank you for your time, and I really appreciate all the insight that you've been
My pleasure.
sharing. And I know that the people in the chat are really enjoying it. Can you speak to any involvement? Speak on whatever you can. I know that there's a lot of red tape.
Yeah.
Can you speak to any involvement in any upcoming albums and what that might look like for you and your involvement?
Yeah, I can't, obviously, I mean, fans email me every day, and there's 10 Twitters every day wanting to know when new music is coming, and new music's coming, but that's about all I can say. So we're actively
Okay.
working on new, great music, and getting to produce and write, and there's some good stuff coming.
Yeah. What does your role in that look like typically?
Uh,
In
it,
previous, let's say in previous albums, ones that you can
yeah,
talk about.
yeah, it depends. A lot of, I record a lot of Kelly's vocals no matter who's producing the album, just because of ease and proximity. It's not that I'm any better. It's just it's a lot easier for Kelly to walk next door to my office, and we can record vocals for projects. Um, or
Is
even
that
on the
in the
road.
NBC studios, or what do you mean for
Yeah,
that?
yeah. On our stage, we have a 5-story building. So on the 4th floor, I have my office where I record our scratch vocals the week. Kelly's glam is right next door to me, so she can literally walk over, record a vocal, walk back, or get her hat. Or we've recorded, vocals on the road in dressing rooms. I think the song "People Like Us" off her greatest hits. We recorded that during a Maroon 5 sound check. Like you can actually hear like the
Oh
kick
my
drum and the
gosh.
vocal bleed happening, but you record where you can.
Oh, I
So
love that.
I do anything she needs, from writing to producing to just her vocal, or doing the entire thing. Basically, whatever she needs with it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's amazing. And so is the process different every time? Like, have you?
Yeah, I mean, literally, it's different every time, and it's different vocal chains, different studios, different environments, and I think I just have such a handle of. I've recorded her on the worst microphones in the world, the best, the in betweens, and at the end of the day, it all sounds like Kelly, because it's the source is what matters. And
Sure,
so, and we just have to work so fast. Like, I'm just, as
sure.
I'm sure as an engineer, I don't want to bore everybody else, but there's no time for adjusting gains between things. It's just like she comes in and she's already singing before she even gets her headphones on. It's just like, so I'm just scrambling to get. My goal is just not to distort, and if I've done that, then then we have a great sounding vocal. We can do a lot with it later.
So the gearhead in me is totally curious. Of all the
Yeah.
microphones you've used, what is your favorite to personally use or
The
record
most I
with?
use, yeah, the most I record with is a Telefunken something 51. I don't know. I can't even remember. It's actually a stereo Telefunken, and I can't remember the name of it. Pretty much every vocal you've heard from her, I'd say since All I Ever Wanted, was just a microphone into a UAD pre. I'm using Apollo stuff like everybody else in the world.
Can
Um,
you really notice a difference between that and like say Focusrite or anything else? Like, is there an actual difference or?
I didn't think I could. Your ears develop over time, and I've been using the Apollo, for years now. And just just a month ago, and for this current project we're working on, I finally moved over to the 500 series stuff. So I got a little, those are little mini racks. So I got a Neve, the Mag EQ, and an 1176 compressor. And I will say I'm hearing a huge difference, and mostly in the low gravelly end of her voice, like it really pulls that out. But
Yeah.
I mean, but we've done great stuff before. Literally with the USB mic that we've had to. I mean, we've done with every possible piece of gear and configuration, noisy environments, quiet environments. And
I mean, how many thousands of stories have we heard where like the guy sends like background vocals using the iPhone's voice memos, and they're now it's a
yeah,
number one hit song, like, and it's like the background vocals are literally voice memos, like so.
yeah,
So I'm just reading over here some of the questions. I asked if there was any more questions inside the chat, and there's a decent amount. So I'm just filtering out which ones are the ones we want to
yeah.
talk about. Um, let's see. Oh, this is an interesting question. What is these are actually okay? These are two great questions actually. Your personal favorite of some of the songs you've worked with. Let's broaden that up from Kelly Clarkson to DC Talk. Anything in between the songs that you've worked with.
Yeah. I can definitely go down. Well, DC Talk stuff. I'm trying to. I think my favorite album was Supernatural, just because it was so keyboard heavy. So the keyboard.
Sure.
Like DC Talk's heyday was right about the time grunge was breaking through, which was
Yeah.
a very dark time for keyboard players. So unless you played a B3, that worked. Nick Carter, I still listen to some of his stuff because I'm a pop head. I'm a huge fan of Max Martin. For people who don't know, Max Martin is a mega producer. I mean, probably 80% of what you heard on the radio comes from Max.
100%. Yeah. Have you worked with
But
him?
if you, I've talked to him on the phone several times. I've never worked with him as a producer or as a songwriter. I've only dealt with him working with Kelly stuff. Like, a lot of times, like when I get ready for tour, I personally love. I'm a sound head, so I love nailing the exact sounds. As a fan, for me, when I go see a band play, I'm sorry, I don't want the acoustic version of your hit. I want to hear, the way I love it on the radio. Kelly's the opposite. Kelly would rather do her biggest hits broken down, intimate, and acoustic. So there's always a back and forth between us. And so if you look at our tours over the years, like we compromise. It's like, okay, we've done the song acoustic for a while. Can we go back to full band? And then she's like, okay, we've been doing it this way for a while. Can we break it down? So anyway, long story to say, yeah, the Nick album, there's a song, if you look it up, called I Got You. It's probably my favorite song off of that era. Kelly stuff, her longtime fans know my favorite song from Thankful is What's Up Lonely. And I think I've tried to get it on every tour. And I think at least 6 of the last tours, we probably do it the first night or the second night. And then she's like, nope, that's not
well, that is a perfect segue to the question of whether or not, like, you know, you've been touring with Kelly for a long time. Like, do you get sick? How soon do you get sick of these songs? Where it's like, you know, like some of these songs, like hits are still on the radio from 18 years ago. Like, do you get tired of it or do you not? And this is a personal question for everybody.
Yeah, but it's very, very, very rare that I get tired of something. And usually, by the time I'm tired of it, I'm going to Kelly and say, hey, let's do this with it. Let's, you know, like
okay,
Miss Independent right now, the way we're doing it, it's like a mashup between a Jay-Z song and, you know, so we've added horns. Like that song has changed the most over the years. Ironically, if you go to Pulse Music Boards and the Kelly forums right now, I think the last 20 posts are all about Already Gone, because we just did a corporate show and we put Already Gone back in the set list. And it's probably one of my favorite sounding songs of Kelly's. Ryan Tedder produced it and I love the production on it. So every tour I'm like, we need to get Already Gone back in here. There's something about the song when we play it live, and even when Kelly does, she gets bored, we get bored. Like it just, you know, it's a song that works great for listening to and has a vibe, but somehow after you've sang Already Gone 35 times in a row, like it's not. So I actually pushed it to be in the set list that we just did, and after the first night, we're like, yeah, that needs to go, and so we took it out. And so, you know, a lot of people are asking, what's the hate for Already Gone? It's just no hate. It's just one of those ones that just doesn't particularly bring us joy live.
Yeah. So. What have you found are some of the more difficult covers that you've had, the ones you've had trouble with?
The hardest one I've ever done, I can't remember the name of the song. It was we were playing Radio City Music Hall. I want to say it was a Bette Midler Broadway song. And that is not my style of playing, not up my alley. So I was a nervous wreck playing, you know, a Broadway song in New York City at Radio City. Kelly killed it, but it was a struggle for me. On a TV show, same thing. You know, I'm a synth player, a B3 player. Piano, I can get by and cheat on some stuff, but that's not, you know, I would never sit down in front of you and play a solo piano song. Which drives, you know, you go home for Christmas and mom's like, play me a song. I'm like, Mom, I don't do that. I play with a band. You know, I'm not supposed to hear. That's not me. So we covered Mr. Rogers. It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. That one's really hard for me because it's very piano jazzy. And then the worst thing Kelly ever did for me is on Wrapped in Red, her Christmas album, the song A Few of My Favorite Things. Greg Kurstin produced that. Greg is also another incredible producer. I'm a huge fan of his. And he's an incredible jazz player. So there's like this piano solo on that song. So then we have to go and perform it live. I think I practiced probably 8 hours a day for 2 weeks just to try to pull that song. And literally it was just like, at this point, I'm like, it's just hilarious. Like, I feel like a fraud. I've won a Grammy and I'm sitting here slowing down the tempo going, da, 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 and just trying to keep going. Like it's just, it doesn't come easy for me. I have to work really, really hard at it. So those ones are hard to cover.
I appreciate your authenticity because I think that one of the things that I think about all the time, you know, as an artist, and something I try to bring light to is like, you know, we all struggle as artists, you know, winning Grammys and not winning Grammys. Like we think that we get to this certain level and it's like, oh, it's going to be patty cake from now on. You know what I mean? It's like, no, like you still had to practice. Even with your Grammy sitting on the wall, you still slowed down the song and had to practice. And it's so
and I still have to do that for the karaoke in our show. And like, man, I can't imagine like growing up now. Like I probably watch 20 YouTube videos a week, still learning how to do things in Logic, still learning. Like I'm watching this little YouTube series right now where I'm learning how to play country licks because we're covering all these country songs. And like, okay, well, I need to figure that out. And now I've got some 12-year-old kid out there, you know, breaking it down for me, slowing me down how to do a country lick, you know. And so it's,
I love it.
It's a great time we live in for things like that.
Oh, dude, I learned guitar on YouTube. You know, shout out to was it Marty Schwartz, the guy that had 1,000 YouTube covers like when I was growing up, man. Oh my gosh, it's so good. But I do again want to thank you so much for your time, and I want to wrap it up with the the reason I do a lot of these interviews is I want to really encourage artists that are coming up that maybe have not, found their stride yet. And with me recently finding my stride, and after years and years and years of nothing, slow nothings, that it's like the ball's finally rolling. Like I like to encourage artists to say, hey, like it's possible. Just it's going to be a stupid amount of work, and if you're willing to put in that work, it's possible, right? So.
Yeah.
I'd love to know your perspective. Like one thing that you learned, like that now that you wish you could have told yourself, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, kind of thing.
Yeah. That's a hard one. I don't have a lot of advice as far as telling people how to get in the door, but I do
Sure.
have some thoughts on once you get your opportunity. Stuff I wish I would have figured out early on. As far as a music director, if you're interested in that role, it's literally it's all about serving. You're literally like you're basically a server at a restaurant. You're a server. It's your job to serve the fans, the artists you're working for. Excuse me. It's really dry here in California right now. And I've found it's really important to have a musical outlet for your artistry. You know, my,
Mm.
you know, I don't sit at home and listen to Kelly Clarkson all day long. It's not, I'm a huge fan of her voice and I love everything we've done together, but it's not the style of music I gravitate towards. And so I have some side projects where that's where I get out my artistry. It's frustrating hiring musicians. Like early on in the Kelly stuff, we had those guys come in and it's like always trying to cool it up. It's like, well, that's a dumb part, like what if we do it more like this? So we're gonna make this cool band guy stuff. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, that's you're here to promote a record and you're serving the artist, not your own needs.
Mm.
And and skill is definitely important. And I know we all still work on our craft, and that never stops. But I've never fired a player yet based upon their skill. It's always a personality or an interaction thing. So your skill is definitely important, but your ability to work with a variety of people and teams, living together, close quarters, having a great attitude, that's really 99% of staying successful in music. In my
Being a
opinion.
people person, 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear you mentioned, once you have your foot in the door, the tips you have on that.
Um, yeah. Well, going back to something you said later on, and I'm not saying you said something weird, but I would never look at any job as a lateral move or an up move or a down move. Like I've been a fan of just saying, I've, I always tell people never say no to a meeting, never say no to a something, and even like a little small side little thing that could always lead into
Yeah.
something else, something else, something else. You never know who you're going to meet, and a lot of the people that I met early on, who might have been a second crew assistant, are now lighting designers, or now front of house guys, or now working in management companies, and so relationship is everything. And so I would just take as much opportunities and gigs from the smallest of clubs to just keep playing, keep playing, keep playing. And
Absolutely.
it's frustrating for people to hear because there's just not a magic way to break through. And you've interviewed so many people, every story is completely different.
Yeah, a hundred
And
percent.
and
But
it's very rare that it's done by checking off all the right boxes.
yeah, but you know what the boxes do get checked off? Every single person that I've asked that question to, it all comes down to relationships. You got to be a good person, like you even said there. Doesn't your skill matters to some degree, but it's
Yeah,
not as important as how you are as a person and how you develop these relationships and
yeah,
fostering relationships, or even to some degree abusing relationships too. Like
yeah,
nobody likes the person that acts too much of people. Like it's
yeah,
very it's
yeah,
all a balance of relationships for 100%.
yeah, yeah. And another part for me is just I've never be too proud to know what your weaknesses are. I'm not saying don't take chances. Like, my first answer, if somebody says, "Can you do this?" I'm like, "Yes," and I'm gonna go try to figure it out, whether or not I've ever done it before. But even in producing the stuff I'm working on with Kelly right now, there's a couple of songs I hired another piano player on. It's like I could have done it, but I just know this person's gonna be better for this job, than me. So there's no, again, when you're serving the project, the artist, your personal ego just can't be there if you're trying to deliver the best product. And I feel like doing the best for the song is more important than making the extra little bucks to be the guy that played on it.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. I think that is so important as an artist. And I think it's to some degree like, you know, even as a songwriter too. It's like, oh, I want to be the songwriter, the only songwriter on the song. It's like, well, yeah, cool, but do you want 6 people to hear it or 60,000 people to hear it? You know, like
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
where do you want to, you know, like, so
yeah,
absolutely, man. It's
yeah.
I agree with a lot of the stuff you're saying, man. So I really want to say thank you so much, for, you know, to you for taking the time. And if you could just hang out for 1 second, I want to say thank you to
Yeah.
everybody that did watch this. You know, to me, all the way to the end, you guys are the true ones. I really appreciate you taking the time and watching the channel, and I hope you guys enjoyed this chat. And what is the best way actually for people to go support you and what you are up to these days?
Just watch the Kelly Clarkson show. That's about all I'm
Okay.
up to these days. So yeah,
So
but reach out to me on my Instagram and say hey, and I'm happy to answer anybody's questions. And
very cool. What's the time slot for that?
that's a great question. We're syndicated, so we're an NBC show, but we're in different cities and different markets. We're on at different times.
Okay.
Um, I think they announced we're going to take over Ellen's slot sometime in 2022,
I heard
which
that.
will be awesome. Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah, it's gonna be really cool.
Yeah, for real, man. That's a big deal for you guys, man. That's
Yeah,
really
it's really
exciting.
exciting. We have an incredible team, and it's really really great
Yeah.
to see it keep going.
Absolutely. Well, you guys heard him, so definitely go check out the Kelly Clarkson show, and you can see him on that show. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to check out my music, it's Jacob Restituto wherever you listen. I'll see you guys in the next one.